Um, in the developed world, you have banks and you can move money from point to point for a few dollars. And you have Wall Street and you can buy assets like the S&P 500 index. If you had $100,000, if you don't put it in the S&P index, you lost purchasing power every year, 7% of it for a decade. So the store of value in the Western world is I shift my assets into ETFs and index funds and stocks, and I wire money around on Apple Pay or whatever it might be, write a check. It's cheap. In the developed world, 2/3 of Mexicans don't have a bank. In El Salvador, they don't have banks. Billions and billions of people don't have banks. And we say they're unbanked. In India, they don't have a bank. But most people don't really think about what that means. Here's what it means. You're a type 1 diabetic, and you don't have insulin. And that means you can eat infinite food, you can't form fat, and you will starve to death. That's what that means. If you can't store economic energy over a long period of time, it means that you can work yourself to death. All your life savings gets drained to zero. And in the month when you lose your job, your family starves to death. So unbanked. In El Salvador, it means there's 2 million people in the US that send $10 billion back to El Salvador every year. 1 billion of it gets stolen by the money transfer agents. Okay, they take a 10% commission. Crazy. Okay, you're taking 10% commissions from a wage laborer sending money to their mother, 10%. The Visa and MasterCard network, by the way, take 2.5%. They're monopolies. Okay, but 2.5% is painful. 10% is brutal. Then you have to get the money through a Western Union office, which means travel for 2 or 3 hours, and maybe you get mugged on the way. And when you get the money in a currency. In certain third world countries, you get the money in the local currency, which is losing 30 to 40% of its value a year. So I send you $1,000, you get 900, then you spend another 100 to get it, so you get down to 800, and then every month that goes by, you lose 50. So it's pretty devastating. That what's the problem? You can't move the monetary energy. And the second problem is you can't store it. I mean, in the US, the typical US or Western individual is losing 1% to 2% of their energy a month if they store it in the currency. The way they get around it is they buy S&P index, and the S&P is up 32% year over year, and they pretend they're rich, right? It's like, good. How does someone in El Salvador buy S&P index stocks? They don't have Robinhood. They don't have a bank. Yep. Right? So you're living hand to mouth. So the significance of Bitcoin for them is you can take a $50 Android phone, download a software wallet. I can send you $87 instantly for free on the Lightning Network. If you store it in Bitcoin, it's going to go up in value. And otherwise, you can spend it, and you're not at the mercy of I'd like to say banks, but the banks don't care. You're not at the mercy of the money changers. And the best case is El Salvador, where they use the US dollar. So they're only losing 1% to 2% of their purchasing power a month. The worst case is Zimbabwe, which means that somebody runs the country. You have to buy the local currency. And that person that runs the country gives billions of dollars of that currency to their buddy. And you better spend the currency because it'll only be worth half as much in 4 weeks or 8 weeks. And in the real worst case, they tell you it's illegal to hold any other asset. I can't hold land. I can't hold gold. I can't buy stocks. And so, you know what? It's literally like taking your insulin away and making all of you diabetics and saying it's illegal to store fat on your body. Good luck with that. In the one day when you can't find food, you will surely die.
So I wanted to double click on this because it's so important. I mean, the realization, and this was the conversation we had down in your home in Miami just a month or two ago, is how absolutely critical this type of a engineered economic system is to allow people to have prosperity, right? I mean, one of the things we talk about is exponential technologies are taking everything that used to be scarce into abundance, whether it's food, energy, water, healthcare, and so forth. But I love the system of the requirement to be able to store energy. and money is economic energy. What happened in El Salvador? Can you take a moment to explain the implications and how important this is?
Well, I think they had a civil war and they lost their currency. Okay, countries that are poorly managed lose their currency privileges. And what we can see is that at 100 countries in the world are all losing their currencies. Everybody's basically, the Venezuelans not going to have a currency. The Zimbabwe don't have a currency. Any currency that collapses more than 20 to 30% against the US dollar eventually fails. So people throw that over and they go to the dollar. The euro is effectively pegged to the dollar. Most of the other currencies are pegged to the dollar. So you've really got two currency systems. You've got CNY, and even the Chinese peg their currency to the dollar, right? If you look at it. So you've got the first world currency system, then you've got the developed world currencies. They're all failing. So in El Salvador, they didn't have a currency. They used the US dollar, and then they're at the mercy of two things. One, the money changers are basically stealing 10 to 20% of their money when they move it back and forth. If I charge you 10% commission every time you move your money to a family member, I mean, how many times do you get to do that, right? So that's a problem. And the second problem is now I'm storing my money in the US dollar. It used to lose 0.5% a month, and now it's losing 2% purchasing power a month because the Fed's printing money. So how do you crawl out of that abyss? And I think the president of El Salvador realized that what you want to do is back your currency or back your country with an asset which is appreciating in value. So Bitcoin's been appreciating 120% a year every year for a decade. The S&P is up 12% a year for a decade. So Bitcoin outperforms the S&P by a factor of 10. It outperforms gold, which is up by maybe 1 to 2% a decade. So it's outperforming gold by a factor of 50. Look, here's the big idea that Bitcoin's not just an asset, right? It's the perfected apex property of the human race. If you have $1 billion and you want to give it to your grandchildren, are you going to buy land in California, a building in New York, $1 billion stack of gold? Are you going to buy $1 billion of Apple stock? Are you going to buy $1 billion worth of art, diamonds, commodities, corn futures, oil? What are you going to buy for $1 billion that'll be here 100 years from now? And if you think about it really hard, you conclude that every other asset class is more easily impaired, seized, confiscated, taxed, or regulated. And of course, some are unpractical. There's no way that 5 billion people in Africa and Asia are going to be walking around with Apple stock on their mobile phones. That's not happening. How do you pay for for anything with Apple stock on a Saturday afternoon in South Africa? Right? That doesn't work. And so, yeah, you could try to use a currency, but now I've been in business 20 years. I can't do business in Nigeria after 20 years because if you want to do business in the fiat currency, you have to have your bank deal with your central bank, deal with their central bank, deal with their bank. Can't do it on the weekend, and you can't do it because of Foreign Corrupt Practices Act in Russia or Nigeria or whoever. And so how do you get 8 billion people trading with each other through 100 million corporations? You need a protocol. What is the protocol? Bitcoin. Bitcoin is Michael, an open monetary protocol to link 8 billion people and 100 million companies with one another in the 21st century.
I'm going to get back to El Salvador. Give me a Bitcoin 101, if you don't mind. We probably have some people here who have heard of it and are interested in learning about it. And we've got a wide range. And I want to get back to what did the president of El Salvador just do. But let's take a second and give us the Bitcoin 101, if you would.
Okay. Let's say that I wanted to create a non-sovereign store of value. I have $1 million. I want to save it for 100 years, and I don't want to trust anybody else with the money. I can't put it in a bank. Every single person in Argentina had 90% of their US dollars and their Argentine pesos seized overnight by the government 20 years ago by edict, stroke of a pen. It wasn't hard. So I can't leave it in a bank. I can't store it in a currency because the banks can steal it from me. I can't save it in a stock. The company might not even exist, and the CEO or the board might dilute it. I can't put it in land because I can't move the land, and they could tax in Florida. They tax you 2% a year on the land. You lose your land in 20 years. So I buy gold. Now that's the traditional idea. But the problem with gold is that every year gold miners produce 2% more gold. And then I can't carry $1 billion of gold through an airport. So I have to put it in a bank. And then 95 of the top 100 cities in the world, 95 or more of them seized all your gold in the past 100 years when the regime changes. Okay, so how do I fix that? So this guy Satoshi invented digital gold on an open protocol monetary network, and we call that Bitcoin. And the way it works is I define 21 million gold coins. I dematerialize them in cyberspace. I make them infinitely divisible by 100 million units each, and that's called a Satoshi. Then I make it impossible to ever make any more than 21 million. And then I give you a protocol where any computer can send the coin or the Bitcoin to any other computer without a middleman. And I make it possible for you to take personal custody of your asset. So if I want $1 billion worth of property, I can carry it around in my head by memorizing the passphrase. I can hold it on a hardware wallet. I can hold it on a mobile phone. I can put it to any computer in the world. Then I can move the $1 billion to any custodian in the world in a few minutes for a pittance.